Hey, my friends. Welcome to Decimals Day 1. If you're watching this, it's probably because you were absent today, so I hope you're feeling better. All right, here's what we're going to do. We're going to do a quick review of place value and rounding. So what I'd like you to do right now is on the worksheet in front of you, I want you to fill in the names of all the place values on those fill in the blanks under Roman numeral 1. And if you'll notice, there is a decimal place there, 3 places in from the right. So make sure that you fill in those blanks to the right of the decimal place with the right word for the decimal places. Okay, go ahead and pause the video and do that right now. All right, let's see if you were correct. We're going to start with the ones place. I hope you had ones right there. That one's pretty easy. Then we have tens, hundreds, thousands, 10,000s, and 100,000s. Pretty straightforward, right, guys? Okay, the decimal places get a little trickier. Let's see if you were correct on those. So you should have had tenths, hundredths, and thousandths. All right, now that you're warmed up, what we are going to do right now is pronounce a couple numbers. So go ahead and say that number that you see in front of you out loud. All right, you should have said 154,000. Say that one. 123,456,789. Here we have 500,904 tenths. This is 1,889,374 and 69 hundredths. This is 34,229 and 5 hundredths. This is 9,815 843 thousandths. So if you'll notice, when we say the decimal names, we are saying them by the name of the smallest decimal place. So for example, in this case, since I have a thousandths right there, I'm just going to say 843 thousandths. Okay, one more. This is 132,856 and 9 thousandths. Okay, now what we are going to do is I am going to talk and you are going to take notes on your worksheet. So you're going to listen to me talk, and the words are going to appear before you in the screen, and you're going to fill in the blanks with what you believe to be the right answer, and then you're going to check and see that you are right. Okay, this is called taking closed notes. We will do this many, many times this year, especially in math. Okay, so let's take a look. Rules of rounding. Step 1, identify the number in the position you are rounding to. Then look at the number to the right of that number. For example, round 14,549 and 436 thousandths to the nearest 10. All right, let's take a look and make sure you filled in the right word in your blank, and then we're going to take a look at that number. Okay, so you should have filled in right on your fill in the blank right there. So what that means for us is first we're going to identify the number in the position you are rounding to. If we want to round 14,549 and 436 thousandths to the nearest 10, let's figure out what digit is in the tens place. So take a second and just look at that number and make sure that you know what digit is in the tens place. All right, you should have either said out loud or mentally identified that we are looking at the 4. So that's the number in the position that we are rounding to. Then we're going to look at the number to the right of that number. You should have identified that we will be looking at the number 9 right there. Okay, so rounding to the nearest 10, and we're going to evaluate the number to its right. All right, step 2. Round the number following these rules. If the number to the right is 5 or greater, increase the number in the rounding position by 1, or round up. If the number to the right is less than 5, leave the number in the rounding position alone, or round down. For example, we want to round 14,549 and 436 thousandths to the nearest 10. So let's check and make sure that you filled in the right things in your blank first. You should have filled in a 5 in the first blank, and you should have filled in a 5 in the second blank. Again, so if the number to the right of the number that we are rounding to is 5 or greater, we're going to increase the number in the rounding position by 1. If the number to the right is less than 5, leave the number in the rounding position alone. Okay, so let's take a look again at our example number. We've got 400, I can't remember it already. All right, 14,549 and 436 thousandths. So, is the number to the right of the rounding position greater or less than 5? Well, it's greater, right? Because we have a 9 right there. So if we're rounding to the nearest tens, and we're going to evaluate the number to the right, we have a 9 in the place to the right of the rounding place. So that's greater than 5. So we are going to end up rounding up. Okay? All right, let's look at step 3. Then complete the rounding as follows. If you are rounding to a decimal place, drop all numbers to the right of the number in the rounding position. If you are rounding to a whole number, replace all numbers between the rounding position and the decimal place with zeros and drop all decimal places. All digits to the left stay the same. Okay, for example, round 14,549 and 436 thousandths to the nearest 10. Let's take a look and make sure that you filled in the right words in your blanks. For the first blank, you should have filled in right. So if you are rounding to a decimal place, drop all numbers to the right of the number in the rounding position. The second blank should say zeros. You could have spelled it out there if you wanted to. If you are rounding to a whole number, replace all numbers between the rounding position and the decimal place with a 0 and drop all decimal places. Now, obviously, if you're rounding to a whole number from a number like our example number right here, since we are rounding the tens place, we're going to drop all of these guys plus the decimal, and we're going to replace him with a 0. So let's go ahead and actually complete this now. So rounding to the nearest tens, step 1, and we want to look to the number to the right of that number. We've already figured out with a great deal of deductive reasoning that the number to the right of our rounding place is a 9. Step 2, that number is greater than, well, oh, you already saw the answer, sorry. So that number is greater than 5, so we want to round up for our rounding place. Step 3, we're going to complete the rounding. So we are not rounding to a decimal place, we are rounding to a whole number, so that little numeral 2 there is going to be applicable. So we're going to replace all numbers between the rounding position and the decimal place with zeros. All right, so here's what that looks like. Ta-da! Now we have 14,550, and we knew according to step 3 that we also should drop all these decimal places, and of course we're going to drop the little decimal place there. So our number is going to end up looking just like that. Okay. Let's practice this with the same number and practice rounding to a couple other positions. All right, so our example number 1, it says rounding to the nearest hundredth means rounding to 2 decimal places. So I'm just looking at letter D, Roman numeral 1 underneath it. So what is step 1 again? We're going to identify the number in the position you are rounding to, and then we're going to look at the number to the right of that. So if we want to round to the nearest hundredth, what digit is in that place? Yeah, it's a 3. So we're looking at this guy right there. Now we want to look at the number to the right of that number. What digit is to the right of the hundredths place? It's a 6. Okay. So we've got a 3 in our hundredths, and we've got a 6 in our thousandths place. So step 2, is that number in the thousandths place 5 or greater? It is, because it's a 6. So we want to round the number in our rounding position up by 1. Okay, so let's take a look at that, what that looks like. The number is 6. What do we do with the hundredths place? Say it in your mind. We're going to round up. So, step 3, we're going to complete the rounding. Now, are we rounding to a decimal place? Yes, we are. Okay, so since we're rounding to a decimal place, we want to drop all numbers to the right of the number in the rounding position. All right, so that second portion isn't applicable to us because we're rounding to a decimal place. So let's see what that looks like if we round to the nearest hundredth. And we have 14,549 and 44 hundredths. Now remember that second part of step 3 is to drop all the zeros after the rounding place. So we're going to end up looking like that. Okay, let's do another example. Now we're going to round to the nearest thousandth. Well, do we have, well, first of all, let's take a look and see what digit is in our rounding position. All right, so step 1. Okay, so 4 is in the thousands place, sorry. And we're going to look at the number to the right of the 4. So that's the 5. Okay, so we're looking at this guy. And we want to look at this guy to the right of our rounding position. Is it greater than or equal to 5? Yeah. So what do? Let's proceed to step 3. We just did steps 1 and 2. Okay, so we need to complete the rounding. So what do we do with that number in the thousands place? Do we go up or down? Okay, we go up. So we're going to round the thousands place up from 4 to 5. Okay, what's the second part of step 3? So are we rounding a whole number right now, or are we rounding a decimal place? We're rounding a whole number. So we need to round up in that thousands place, and we need to replace all the numbers between the rounding position and the decimal place with zeros, and then drop the decimal place. So what is our final number going to look like? And I think you already have it on your piece of paper there, but it should look like 15,000. Okay, now comes the fun part. Flip your paper over, and you're going to do your toyos. So what is a toyo? We're going to talk about toyos every single day in math class all year long. You're going to get to do them all the time. They're so fun. I love toyos, and I just like saying toyos, so whatever. Okay, back to the lesson. What is a toyo? The T stands for try on your own. So T-O-Y-O, try on your own. Pretty cool, huh? I don't know who thought of that, but they must have been awesome. Okay, so what I want you to do right now is pause the video and go ahead and do all the toyos that you see in the back of your worksheet, okay? Don't go on and check the answers until you've done those, because there's no point. All right, these toyos are for you to make sure that you understand what the lesson is. So go ahead and do that right now. Pause the video, and then when you're finished, come back to the video and check your answers. All right, so let's take a look and see if you got the right answers. Check your first 4 right there. Okay, let's check the last 4. Were you right? All right, good job. Okay, so there is also an in-class worksheet called Rounding Decimals. I'd like you to complete that now so you have a little bit more practice. This is not going to be turned in. You can have a parent check this if you want, but your homework is to do worksheet 110/111. You're going to do the evens only. You should know what evens mean, but in case you forgot, it's 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, and so on. All right. So you can practice writing this in your planner if you want to. Because you're at home, you will have gotten a buddy sheet with this written on it. But these are the guidelines for writing in your planner, and I'll go over those really quickly so that you know what to do for the future. You should always write the assignment in your planner exactly as it appears on the board. You're going to write your full name, date, and student number on the assignment, and then you're going to look over the assignment. Oh, I'm running out of time. My video is going to shut off. So go ahead and pause this and look